and welcome to the Silverwind. My name is Captain Tom, and I am joined by our co-host and producer, Wilson. He's an intergalactic robot, so we try to keep him off the mic. And sorry about the delay today. We had a little bit of an issue. Apparently, his software froze up on me when I tried to just put a simple picture on it. So I don't know, you're gonna have to work out the bugs in that, Wilson. But yeah, anyway, so we are going to go outside the solar system again today, and we're going to do our reading for Genesis chapter 18, called at least I'm calling it the Lord's Visit. And so we're going to engage that next part of the story. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about where we're going to go. So I wanted to maybe test the limits of the Silverwind a little bit, or really not really testing it, but just going a little bit further than we've gone before. So we kind of went outside the solar system accidentally last time, and my cup has a lid on it, so we're all good there. Shouldn't have any issues anymore. And yeah, so I don't know. Well, let's go ahead, and we're gonna go to a galaxy, one that's actually a pretty famous one, and easy to see from Earth because it's really not that far away. And we're going to talk about galaxies just kind of in general, because there's some pretty interesting stuff with some recent findings just this year as far as galaxies go. So let's go ahead and make that happen here. Let's see, we can turn that down a little bit. All right, make sure we do this right. That should do it. Okay, let's see how we go. All right, perfect. How you guys doing? So we got P. Johnson, we got Just Some Guy. Glad you guys are on board today. And once again, sorry, 20 minutes late for the show. So that's kind of a, an issue right there. Well, let's go ahead and turn that music down. And there it is. You probably shouldn't hit the mic like that, huh? All right, so yeah, Julian, how you doing? So today, let's go ahead and get my notes on this one right here. So it has a few different names. So this galaxy is called the Phantom Galaxy, also known as Ngc-628, and then Messier 74. And so, like I said, this is one of those galaxies that we're going to be positioned kind of where you would see it from a telescope, that sort of thing. And yeah, so here it is. So actually, Wilson, could you get put up the infrared for us? Yeah, turn on the near cam. We can see it a lot easier when he turns the near cam on. So this is basically what we're looking at. This is a spiral galaxy. There it is. Perfect. Okay, so let's make sure we don't float around anywhere we shouldn't be. And we're locked in place here. All right. So with that, yeah. Few things about this galaxy. This is a pretty good one to study, and just kind of seeing, like, there's 100 billion stars in this galaxy. It's easy to see how a spiral galaxy is kind of shaped. This has basically two individual arms on it. And let's see here. We got a few more things on this right here. We got the 100 billion stars. It is 32 million light years away. It's not the closest galaxy. There's actually a galaxy really close to our solar system, or not our solar system, but the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way is kind of, tearing it up because of how close it is. But yeah, so this is basically the design of these galaxies. You got lots and lots of stars, you got these gases, and you have at the center of them all some kind of massive black hole, which is what's tying the whole thing together and kind of creating this spiraling effect. And so what I wanted to show you guys, we have some recent findings with the James Webb Telescope. And before we actually talk about that, let's talk a little bit about, the idea of where these galaxies could have possibly come from. And we can kind of compare this this biblical account to the modern day kind of materialist perspective of these two things. So taking the materialist point of view, The galaxies come from essentially the Big Bang. You've had the Big Bang would have, basically thrown hydrogen, almost complete hydrogen, in every random direction. And as these hydrogen clouds basically condensed from all that movement, they would then collapse into stars. These stars would age, and then anywhere between millions of years to, even trillions of years, a star's life cycle is actually shorter the larger it is. So if they're massive stars, then maybe they last for a few million years. They then collapse, and most of the time they would essentially explode and expel all of the material that was created from the fusion at the core of that star. That's where we would get more things than just hydrogen being in the universe. So that fusion would condense, oxygen would get created, and then other molecules and things like that. Everything that you see on the periodic table of elements, all the way down to iron. And then of course when these explode, it then expels that material, filling the universe with matter. And so that's the materialist approach to basically where stars and matter come from, and then how these things form, because every once in a while, one of these stars, when they explode, they actually form a black hole, which would then create something like this. So all of that stuff takes a bit of time. And one of the interesting things about studying, stars and galaxies in space is that the further away, so if you take the materialist perspective, there was a Big Bang, billions of years later. I think it's 13.8 billion years, they say, is how long ago the Big Bang occurred. So that means if you could see a star that's a million light years away, well, then it took a million light years for that light to reach the Earth, which means that you're looking at that star and what it looked like a million years ago. This is where they get the idea that as they look into space, they're looking into the past. And so if you find a galaxy that's, let's just say, near the time of the Big Bang, the projected models would show you should be seeing not fully formed galaxies. Instead, you should be seeing kind of proto-galaxies, or maybe the way things looked before galaxies were able to fully form, right? So like these proto-galaxies kind of thing. Underdeveloped, not fully formed galaxies. So that is that perspective. Now, if we look at the biblical perspective, instead of seeing everything that's millions of years ago, well, one of the ideas about what's expressed in creation is that God created, things on earth like trees and animals and things like that. He created them fully mature, which means that if he was going to create stars millions of light years away, he would then have to create fully mature stars with a fully mature path of light between that star and Earth, meaning that you aren't seeing the star as it was millions of years ago. You would be seeing it the way that God created it and wanted you to see it as a fully mature system that may seem old, but God created it that way so that you could actually enjoy his creation and see what's out there in the heavens, so to speak. So these are the two different kind of obviously different ways of looking at the universe in general. And so I want to show you guys some pictures here, and this is what caused the problem, so we're not going to mess with that again, but I can switch over to a different screen and show you guys. So I can't put it up on this screen right here. Let's see here. Let me get to it. I think that should work. All right, we'll get that one, get that one. Okay, so I'm going to switch the screen over here, and you guys will pretty much just be looking at this. Hopefully nothing else crazy happens. All right, well, so let's try it. Okay, so so we got right here let's see here. Actually, can I pause that? I think I can. Perfect. All right, so we have two galaxies right here. I couldn't get the image on the right a little bit bigger, but basically these are galaxies that they were able to discover in space that are pretty close to the beginning of the Big Bang. We're talking about 300 million years close to the Big Bang, because these are 13.4, 13.3 billion light years away. And one of the big ones right here is these JADES GS-Z14-0, and that's the big one that you see right there. So they're able to see this with the new telescope that they have out there, the James Webb. I'll go ahead and switch back right here. There we go. So they're able to see that galaxy, and basically what they're seeing is not only are they seeing a massive, fully formed galaxy that would have to be, according to their own predictions, the materialist perspective, only 300 million years old from the time of, of the Big Bang, right? That's what we would be looking at. And so with that, there's also a high presence of oxygen in order for it to be as bright as it is, which means you would have had to have generations and generations of stars to live out their life, explode. You would have to have had that supermassive black hole, everything to be organized in basically a very similar shape like you have right here. We're kind of looking at the side of it, but it's probably a spiral galaxy. And so all of that happening within 300 million years, it actually has them really a lot of scientists scratching their heads and trying to figure out how could you have fully formed massive galaxies with a presence of oxygen in the system, with only 300 million years time. Once again, we have things that we look at in space. It's a pretty difficult, argument that they have to make at that point in time. They got to do a lot to try and explain that. And you know what? Maybe that's the case. Maybe there's some kind of explanation for it, but there isn't currently a good explanation for it. And the easier explanation, and this would go to the biblical explanation, is that God created these things fully mature, even if it's 13 billion light years away, fully mature, and then connected the light so that you could see what it actually looks like and enjoy his creation, right? So there's those two different perspectives. You believe what you want, but I do think it was something interesting to show. So anyways, this spiral galaxy right here, the phantom galaxy, we're going to have this as our background right here. So let me fix my dashboard right here. And so with that, we'll turn around the ship during the little transition scene, and we'll have this as our background as we read today's story in Genesis chapter 18. So with that, I think we're pretty good. Let's go ahead and hit that transition. See you guys back at the reading room. All right, so let's go. So we got oh man, this is such a cool scene right here. So let's get into this. We've got Genesis chapter 18, what was previously covered in Genesis 17. So we had God reconfirming his covenant with Abraham and kind of spelling out for them exactly what he was going to do, despite all of, Abraham and Sarah trying to rush God's plan through Hagar. And that was a situation that didn't turn out well. God had to clean that up. And then you have a situation where God is reconfirming that, letting them know, actually, giving them new names, Abraham and Sarah, instead of Abram and Sarai. And then with that, saying, listen, Sarah is going to have a child, a son, in a year's time. And, basically making it very, very clear to what was going to happen next. So with that, Abraham kind of laughed a little bit and was like, how could this be? But we saw Abraham's heart at the end of that chapter, where he was fully on board for what God was asking him to do. And as a sign of the covenant, they went through the practice of circumcision, and he went and just did, got all the men in his household done with that in one day, showing he was putting his faith and trust in God, because that would incapacitate all the men of the household, make you vulnerable to an attack or that sort of thing. He didn't care. He was just listening to God. So he's back to a good place, with his faith. And so today we're going to pick up there. Sarah, at this point in time in the story, has not heard this promise yet. So we're definitely going to see some pretty interesting interaction here, where the Lord is going to show up in a pretty interesting way. So let's find another little view right here. Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Let's do this. Okay, so starting with Genesis chapter 18, we're gonna go through 1 through 5. The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. "My lord," he said, "if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey." All right, so this is really interesting. So, spoiler alert here, the Lord in this situation, this is God, and the 2 people that are with this character are angels, and that's something we know from, continuing on with the rest of the story. And Abraham recognizes the Lord immediately. So this is kind of a bit shocking, a bit interesting, because the Bible makes it very, very clear that no one has seen the Father. Now, we've come across this a few times before. We had the essentially God appearing to Hagar in the form of the angel of the Lord, and we discussed who the identity of that is, and that's the same identity of the Lord here in this situation, right? In this chapter. Now, there are a couple of times in the past where essentially the Lord has appeared to Abraham, and it's used that kind of language. And this would be, let's see here, I think it's going to be Genesis 12 and Genesis 17. This is Genesis 12:7 and Genesis 17:1, where it says that the Lord appeared to Abraham. And in those chapters, it could easily have just been like a vision or something like that, where the Lord wasn't literally there. But in this situation, he is literally there. And so how could that be? Well, the identity of this in particular would have to be the Son of God. So sometimes that's referred to as a pre-incarnate Christ. And that basically just means this is the persona of God that is the Son and not the Father. So it's not God in its entirety, but it's that one specific persona of God itself. Which makes sense. We've got a verse here with John 1:18. I'm going to read that real quick. It says that no one has ever seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in close relationship with the Father. And so that's basically where we're getting this from, and understanding that this is essentially Jesus before he's born into a human body. So this is him before he takes on humanity, and he's still just just that part of the Trinity of God, right? Which is pretty cool. So, I mean, you could essentially, just picture Jesus in the situation, and you would have an accurate picture of what's going on here. So, so he's showing up. Clearly, Abraham in these past visions, or even if he was showing up in person, he's clearly can recognize and knows who this is, which is pretty cool. They seem to have a pretty close relationship. And he's just to me like, this isn't normally how you would treat a guest. This is above and beyond, and so that's what we're going to get into with this next part right here. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. "All right," they said, "do as you have said." So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, "Hurry, get 3 large measures of..." Sorry, let me say that again. "Hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread." Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. All right. Speaking of that water, I think I need to drink it. But so this is basically above and beyond. He's, this is a normal practice here. He's washing his feet. He's gonna, they had servants that could have prepared all this stuff, but they are preparing it themselves, which is kind of adding to the honor that they're trying to give to their guests right here. And that's obviously because he knows this is the Lord, and just wants to treat him with the best that he has to offer, his best hospitality, which is pretty cool stuff. The story will pick up here as we get into a little bit of conversation with the Lord, and keep this in mind. There's a lot that we learn in this chapter about who God is, his character and his personality. And what better way to do that than having him show up in the story personally? And so we've got, Abraham here, who really doesn't have a lot of knowledge of God other than, the times that God has appeared to him, the things he's revealed before. But Abraham is still really trying to figure out who this God is. And so we're going to get some pretty good insight into that. So with that, let's go ahead and continue the reading. All right. "Where is Sarah, your wife?" the visitors asked. "She's inside the tent," Abraham replied. Then one of them said, "I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old?" All right, so God made a promise before. So in chapter 17, said basically in a year that this would happen. So this visit has to be coming pretty shortly after the previous chapter, at least within 3 months, right? So he's saying that, or probably exactly 3 months if we're doing that math. So he's going to come back in a year and she is going to have a son. And her reaction is very similar to Abraham's reaction, and it was to laugh. And if you guys remember from last week, basically the name that God told him to give was Isaac, which means laughter. So God is, he seems to have a little bit of a little fun with this, a little bit of a little bit of humor, right? They both laugh, and it's like, yeah, you're laughing, but like, listen, like I can do anything, right? So you're going to name your kid Laughter, and to basically point at the seeming absurdity of this miracle being able to happen. But let's go ahead and read the next part here, so we get the Lord's response to this laughter. All right. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "No, you did laugh." All right, a fun little interaction there. So that word "hard" that's used right there is also the same word that's used in Hebrew for wonderful. So basically, is there anything too wonderful for the Lord to be able to accomplish? And so here we are, right? Getting a view of who God is, basically saying, listen, nothing is too difficult for me. Even you being old, she's in her 90s, right? Being that advanced in age and still being able to have kids, it's like the Lord is saying, well, of course it's going to happen because I said it's going to happen. I can literally do anything. Nothing is too wonderful for me to be able to do. Nothing is too difficult for me to be able to do. So so it's pretty interesting right there. Not a whole lot on that, just kind of a little interaction with between the characters there, and God once again reconfirming his covenant, and this time directly so that Sarah can hear and also be challenged in her faith of this miracle that's predicted to happen. So let's go ahead and move on. We're going to get into another part here, and this is going to start to introduce Sodom and Gomorrah. So this is really interesting. So listen to how the Lord handles this. Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. As they left, Abraham went to them and to send them on their way. Let me say that one more time. Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. "Look, I hide my plan, or should I hide my plan from Abraham?" the Lord asked. "For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham and all that I have promised. All right. So it's kind of this interesting part of the story right here. Basically, the scene is that they are all getting up and going out. The three are going towards Sodom. They seem to have some kind of mission or something that they have to deal with there. And Abraham is going with them to see them on their way. So basically walking along with the Lord and these two angels for a time in order to see them out appropriately, right? With that continued hospitality. And so you have the Lord here basically talking to himself. Maybe he's talking to the angels saying, should we really keep what we're about to do from Abraham? Because, he singled out Abraham to do these amazing things. So why not let him in on this? And I think the main purpose for this is he's basically saying, why not basically let Abraham know this so that he can know who I am, right? So God wants to reveal part of who he is to Abraham in this moment by letting him know what the mission they're on right now. So let's find out what that mission is. All right, here we go. So the Lord told Abraham, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see their actions, if they are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. The other men turned and headed towards Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why, you would be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same. Surely you shouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right? Well, it definitely confirms that Abraham knows exactly who he's talking to. This is clearly God, to be the judge of all the earth. So with that, basically you have he's asking this question of God's character, like, are you really going to destroy it? Now there's something interesting about the situation. Abraham knows that Lot is over there, so he believes that he's righteous, and Lot is a righteous man, and we're going to see more of that in the continuation of the story. But maybe he's a little concerned about Lot, but it seems that he's really concerned about the character of God himself. Like, Abraham probably knows that there's a lot of evil going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is also really interesting as well. So when we had the previous story with the Tower of Babel, it says that God went down personally to see the tower that was being built. And we talked about a little bit of that then. This shows God's personality, of that it's not just okay it seems in his mind, to just say, yeah, I'm aware of everything that goes on, and I'm aware of that from a distance, and I'm going to make a judgment about it. No, God shows up personally. He makes himself a witness to the act of evil, so that when you're in that courtroom, it's like, hey, listen, I have this thing against you, Sodom and Gomorrah, the people who building the Tower of Babel, and I am also a witness to it. So he's not just the judge, he is also the witness to essentially the evil act or the crime and that sort of thing, which is showing God's justice, in that he gets personally involved with these things, and he doesn't treat judgment lightly. He's not just flippant about it. He's not, sometimes people try to describe, the God of the Old Testament as just being very angry and just quick to wrath and that sort of thing. And that's not what we're seeing here. God knows exactly what's going on there, but the Son of God is going to show up personally to witness it himself before they judge the city. And so that's, I just think that's a pretty interesting thing about God's character. And now we have Abraham really concerned, Lord, would you lump the righteous in with the wicked? And I think we're all very familiar with, was a collective punishment. It never feels good to be a part of collective punishment when you're doing the right thing and then someone does the wrong thing. When I was in the Navy, you had this issue where someone had pulled a prank on on the chiefs. the day before, the night before. And so we're, ready to have like go on liberty. We're gonna leave the ship, and been underway for weeks at a time. So we're ready to leave. And the chiefs like wouldn't let anybody leave, and they were basically saying, listen, until we figure out who pulled this prank. And I think it was someone put a bunch of glue all over their chairs, so when they got up that day, they didn't sit in it, but they could have. And they're like, this is going against our authority, and this, that, and the other. And they made a really big deal about it. They basically kept every single person in the division from going out on liberty. And for all of us who had nothing to do with the prank, we're just thinking like, well, this is unjust. We're being punished for something someone else did. And so it's never good to be in that kind of situation. And so basically Abraham is saying like, Lord, doing that would be evil. Why would you treat, please don't treat the righteous same as the wicked. And then he proposes the question, just say there are 50 righteous people there. So let's see what God has to say in response to this. Is this just human morality, or is this in fact God's morality as well? All right. Let's see here. Okay, and the Lord replied, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again, since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord, even though I am but dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than 50. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? All right, so there's a further exploration into this. Abraham is not satisfied with the number 50. Okay, so God wouldn't lump in that many righteous people with the wicked. Maybe it's an issue of numbers. Maybe it's because there's that many righteous people. So now we're going to go through this back and forth. I'm just going to read through it, where Abraham is really trying to understand where that limit is. Like, would God essentially lump even a single righteous person in with the wicked, or is it a numbers game? Is it about weighing good and bad? And if the bad is too much, then he'll just judge the whole thing. So let's see what God's response is in all this. Some people will say, looking back at this text right here, that Abraham is trying to change God's mind. And that's not what he's trying to do. He's just trying to understand God. Just keep that in mind, that is what is happening in this situation. All right. So, and the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous people there. Then Abraham pressed his request further. Suppose there were only 40. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Please don't be angry, my Lord, Abraham pleaded. Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if I find 30. Then Abraham said, since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. All right, so it looks like we have our answer. So even if 10 people are there, God will not destroy the city for the sake of 10. And basically, this entire interaction is just to show God's justice and God's nature, in that he is not willing to lump in righteous people with the wicked at all. So, if you're, concerned that, living in a place that's got a lot of evil and that sort of thing, that God is going to punish you along with them, that's not going to be the case. So he truly is just. He is perfectly just, and God cares about the details, which I think is pretty impressive and a wonderful thing to discover and to look more into in God's character and his nature. So if you are familiar with the story, God does destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's because there was in fact one righteous person found there, but he doesn't destroy the city until he takes that person out of it. So God does not actually, judge the city until the number of righteous people there is a total of 0. So yeah, God, keeps his word to Abraham. And, maybe Abraham thought that, well, surely there's more righteous people there than just Lot. Maybe God won't destroy it. But, Abraham seems concerned, at least in the fact that he's aware of the bad things going on there too. So we'll get more into that next week. That's where the chapter ends today. And with that, I think we've gotten to a pretty good part right there. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you can put it into the comments. You can after the video, if you're watching when it's not live, or in the comments section in the live part right there in the chat. So with that, let's go ahead and go back to the front of the ship, and we will head back to Earth. All right, Wilson, let's hit that transition. All right, so we've got this beautiful galaxy right here that we're gonna have to say goodbye to. Let's see, I want to make sure we get this right. Okay, perfect. All right, so Phantom Galaxy. Let's return here. See, yep, we'll turn that off. Perfect. Easy day. All right, with that, even starting 20 minutes late, we still finished within an hour, so that's pretty good. With that, if you guys have any requests on a specific galaxy or anything like that you'd like to go to, just let me know and we'll put that on the list. We'll probably do a little more exploration around Jupiter next week, unless something else gets our attention. But yeah, other than that, we have a pretty good exploration into God's character this week, and we'll get a further exploration into that, his justice and his wrath, next week, and also a little bit of insight into the nature of Lot and why he's considered a righteous man. So yeah, let's see here. I want to get all right, that locked into place. Easy day. All right, well, with that, appreciate you guys for jumping on. Appreciate you guys being patient with the show starting so late. Kind of threw things out of loop there a little bit, but with that, appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys next week. All right, we got things pushing through. Heck yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a team effort here, so be sure to if you like the video, hit that like. It really helps with the algorithm, and also sharing the show. Anyone who would enjoy hearing these stories and seeing some of the stuff about the universe and learning a little bit more about that. I find that stuff pretty interesting. So I'm sure there's at least 1 billion people out there. That's our goal. We're trying to get to that humble 1 billion subscribers. We'll get the world together in one spot, and we'll bring them together. So fighting against bad culture and promoting good culture. So with that, I will catch you guys next time.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. to the highways till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on